All right, I think we're good to go. Got a good crowd that joined us here today. Welcome, everybody. My name is Eric Young. I'm the CEO and Creative Director of EYStudios. Today is the March 2020 episode of The Big Review. Very excited about today's webinar. Got a lot to pack in. Normally, we focus on site reviews, as you know, but this is not the normal webinar. We've got a lot to talk about. The world has changed dramatically since the last time we were with you. And I want to welcome Dan Furtick. He's the Global Director of Big Commerce. Dan, are you there?
Hey, how are you, Eric? Thank you for having me join today.
Doing great. I guess you're quarantined as I am. You're in Texas. How's it going there at the Furtick household today?
It is thankfully a warm day, and I'm thankful to have a backyard for my children to go and play. I was going to say it's uncertain times today, and that's the subject matter that we're going to touch on. I think the only certainty might be that one of my two young children come into my home office and interrupt this webinar, so I'll try to keep that from happening.
We'll be very understanding. You might hear a German Shepherd bark on my end, something, but we'll make our way through it. But like you said, we got a lot to cover as far as the uncertainty that's going on right now in the world, especially in the world of e-commerce, and we've got some answers today. We've got some really good actionable insights we're anxious to share with you today. We're calling this segment Adapt and Overcome, E-commerce in Uncertain Times. We'll have a panel of experts for our site review segment here later, but let's go ahead and get right into it. So Dan, you and I were talking earlier in the week about what we're going to discuss here in the webinar, and it really is, like we've got here on the slide, it is a tipping point for e-commerce. This is a moment of time that merchants can take advantage of. You know, there's obviously severe disadvantages going on right now, but there's also advantages, some opportunities that people can dive into. And what I'm seeing, Dan, is I talk to merchants, you know, like I said in the video that advertised the webinar, I'm talking to a lot of business owners right now, and the range is significant. You know, you've got folks that are very nervous, they're anxious about what's happening, but you've also got the merchants that are rolling up their sleeve thinking, all right, this is going to end at some point, and I've got, you know, work to do now, and we're thinking about the aftermath of this as well. And some are doing something now, and some are not doing something. What are you seeing, like within big commerce, as you talk to merchants and partners? What's your take overall on what's going on, Dan?
Yeah, thank you, Eric. I think fundamentally, you know, merchants' perspective, those that we're talking to, I mean, their job hasn't changed, right? At the end of the day, their goal is to understand market need, where their product fits within that market need, and try to get those products into customers' hands as transparently and as quickly as possible. We're thinking about it internally in two really different ways. One is, what can BigCommerce be doing to help those businesses, whether they're on Main Street with just a single brick and mortar store, to, you know, B2B business that's not yet transacting online, to marketplace sellers that don't have a branded site and are being impacted by decisions on the Amazon side. And what can we do to get them online quickly at low cost, deferred cost, to make sure they stay in business? The second part is really around current customers. We have more than 60,000 of them. And so I wouldn't, you know, have a blanket answer for all of them. Some of them are thriving right now, right? Think nutritional supplements and vitamins, at-home fitness, consumer electronics, kids and baby. Some are really struggling. And so for us, it's about finding ways to see how we can help them. Sometimes that's relevant content. Sometimes that's pricing. Sometimes that's leaning on some of our marketing partners to help leverage and reduce fees. Sometimes that's offering advanced functionality at lower plan levels. Sometimes it's just a consulting session, a free consulting session, an introduction to a great agency partner like EY to really help them understand where they should be focused and prioritize and where they should be scaling back. Oh, did I lose you?
Oh, I'm sorry. Technical glitch there. Sorry about that. But Dan, you know, we were talking earlier about just kind of the types of merchants that are impacted. Yes, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sorry, I apologize. Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, good to go. Sorry. Let's go right into the next slide. We've got a huge lack of certainty and transparency. Obviously, when folks turn on the news, Dan, when they listen to CNN, Fox, whatever they're going to on Facebook, on social, there's a lot of junk going on right now. A lot of just pundits saying doom and gloom. It's certainly contributing to a lot of the uncertainty, the lack of transparency, and merchants can really take advantage of that here? What are you seeing? What are some things here that they can do?
Yeah, I'd say it's a good point right now. Right now, transparency is, I think, more important than ever. And so that's transparency in how you communicate to merchants. That's transparency in, whether and how quickly you can get them their products. So if it's going to be, weeks until you can ship product, be transparent in the checkout page. If it's going to be, or follow up with them on a phone call. If it's a B2B sale, let them know around expectations around fulfillment as well. The goal ultimately is to build that trust, because if you can build that trust now, those merchants and those customers will want to stay with you forever.
Right. Well, in transparency, it's all about setting the right expectations, and merchants need to do that with the customers. And there's lots of ways that we can do that, and we'll go into more details on that. But let's go on to the next slide. As we think about what customers are going through right now, this is just kind of an overview. There's a lot of anxiety, like we mentioned, nervousness. A lot of folks are scared. A lot of folks are bored out of their mind. They're looking for things to do. Like you mentioned, you've got your kids there. I've got my 7-year-old running around going crazy. But I think overall, folks are anxious to get back to a normal life. And what merchants can do is they can be calm. They can be empathetic to what their customers are going through and be positive. We tend to focus on our needs and what we're going through, but we really have to be focusing on our customers and where their head is at, where their heart is at, and speak to them with that. We've got to be energetic, and I think it's even appropriate. We don't want to be tone deaf on this, Dan, but I think in certain cases we need to have humor. I see some of the memes and GIFs being circulated on social media, and people want to lighten up a little bit. They're anxious, again, just to go back to that normalcy. And anything that your brand can do to inject that positivity is going to be appreciated. Like I said, you can't be tone deaf to that. You don't want to go overboard with it. But I think that's critical in order to engage customers in the way that they'd like to be treated. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, I think that's well put. I think of an example. I think empathy and calm and positivity are really important right now, and acting like you're a group of people. Corporations are really made up of a group of people, and I think that's important to have that show in today's day and age. So I'll give you a great example that's happened in my personal life. My wife and I are customers of Geico, an insurance company, and they sent out an email that was different than an email that everyone else was sending out. Your typical COVID-19 email was, hey, we're here for you. We're instituting work from home, but we're full steam ahead, and our employees are taking great care, and them and our customers are our number one priority. We received a very different email, and it actually helped us to engage with them differently. So the email from Geico was basically them telling us that they were going to be waiving termination for non-payment for the next 90 days. So any customers that were at the point in their lives where they had to decide between paying their insurance bill and putting food on the table that month, Geico is there to help you not have to make that decision. And so I can promise you, when we do return to normalcy, people who benefited from that are going to be customers for life. I mean, my wife is not one inclined towards social media, and she actually posted a thank you to the company. I've never seen her do that before, for the proactive steps in supporting customers. Even though, thank God we're not in a position to have to take advantage of that. Just the realization that this is a company that cares about its customers. I mean, that's an example of a company doing it right.
No, that's a great example, and like I said, it's so different from the tons of emails that we get about here's what we're doing here to battle COVID-19 with our employees, et cetera. We have to about the customers, particularly for online merchants, because otherwise it can really, I think, negatively impact how people perceive the merchandising. Don't you think, Dan? So we got to be upbeat and positive, like we were just saying. Sales is based on emotions. I think that the higher the emotion, the higher your sales potential, and the opposite of that is true as well. If you don't have a lot of emotion, you can't really expect a lot from a sales perspective. it's all about your customers' needs and wants, and we have to really key into that. And one way to really do that is through social media, like we mentioned, to really stay in touch with them. Any of your communication channels, your website, newsletter, social, phone, have got to be fine-tuned right now. We can't take anything for granted. I was talking to somebody the other day about how they're talking to their customer service staff on how critical it is to be friendly, to be engaging, to not be down in the dumps. They've got different things they're going through, but the customer service is so key right now more than ever, Dan.
Yeah, agree with that completely. I think it's there's three components to that. I think, from a sales standpoint, it's important to be, relevant when you're talking about what you're messaging to customers. It's from a customer support standpoint, now is not the time to be thinking about cutting support staff or underinvesting in customer communications. And as you think about your different media channels, all of you brands out there, your relationship with your customers, whether that's B2B customers or you're a consumer-oriented B2C business. Don't be afraid to lean into that right now, right? That could be, you posting, a picture to your social media feed, your corporate social media feed about your employees working home with their dogs. It could be an email communication of, our staff's recommended books to read, while working from home, saving the hour each way on commute. Don't be afraid to lean into your relationship with your customers and develop a more personal conversation without always feeling the need to merchandise and sell them something.
Right. So instead of saying, here's what we're doing for you, right? It's not just about what's happening behind the scenes. Here's what we're doing for you as a customer. I like what you're saying about being authentic about what your staff is going through, et cetera, because that's something that your customers can relate to. I love that idea. All right, let's go on to number 2, which is be meaningful. I know this is something you're really passionate about, Dan. When we think about products and services, the products have to delight customers and the service has to engage them. And on the surface, this may seem like a no-brainer. It's like, well, okay, what do you mean by that? But now more than ever, your products have to be merchandised in a way that, like we were talking about, that has that emotion, that has that energy, so that you've got that positivity to engage your customers with, and that service has to be just on point. Dan, I know you were talking earlier this week, something you feel really passionate about is you can get customers for life with this. If you treat your customers right now, they'll remember that. That's going to have long-term positive impacts for the brand, right?
Agreed. And there are real tactical things that you can do to be meaningful to your customers, to delight them. So some ideas that we've heard merchants discussing are things like, if you're in the beauty and cosmetics business space, for example, I mean, that's a place with people not going into the office, not going to restaurants and bars. Why don't you schedule a virtual social for your loyalty program members? And give them 25% off their purchase, and everyone is encouraged to kind of get dressed up and feel normal again for an evening. And do cross-brand promotions. If you want to combine that with somebody else in the spirits industry and the wine and beverage industry, create something really interesting and different. If you're in the subscription business and you're worried about attrition for your subscription, a good way to keep people from attriting is to say, hey, the next month is on us, right? Because if they're sitting at their budgets today thinking about, oh man, I'm going to need to cut things from my budget, and you're the brand that stops up and says, hey, your next subscription box or your next package, it's on the house as a way to help you get through this. You're going to be the subscription that they don't cut because they know next month they're getting something for free from you. Those are just like nuanced little things that we're seeing merchants consider as ways to help to maintain the customers they have and follow where they go and acquire new ones.
Right. Well, and I love the creative ideas you have. The reality is these are problems. We're all facing problems right now, but creative problem solving is critical. I love like the type of the virtual social element that you've got. I think that's really cool. And even on earlier episodes of Big Review, we've talked about how you can't just list your products. You've got to sell them, and you've got to engage in a way that's meaningful to customers. A lot of great ways you can do that. Number 3, create promos that resonate with your loyal customers. You know, Dan, right now we have retention and acquisition strategies all over the map right now. We're talking to the clients about this regularly. They want to hang on to the customers that they've got, and they want to get new customers if they can get them. And so merchandising is obviously a key way to do that. But that steady customer base, that the folks that have already bought into your brand, your loyal tribe members, making sure that they're happy, that they're taken care of, is so critical right now. You know, you mentioned loyalty programs earlier, and I think that that's something that could either people could introduce or expand on it if they already have it. And there's so many services. I know you've got some ideas around this, Dan. So many services that maybe merchants have been sitting on. They've considered.
Yeah.
The time just wasn't right, but now the time may be right, right? What do you think?
Yeah, I would say, you know, if you don't have a loyalty program in place, I mean, we have loyalty partners that you can get up and running in under a week. I think this is a perfect opportunity to go and implement one. We can talk about customer acquisition just in a second here, and I know you're showing some perfect examples. It's also, I think, from a loyalty standpoint, it's important to be in tune with how your customers are engaging with you right now, right? So if you are typically in fashion and apparel and people are not buying cocktail dresses right now, or they're not buying swimsuits because their vacations were scrapped, think about doing something like a work from home bundle, right? Are there products that you can merchandise and tailor for, you know, a special work from home package for our employees? So really important to be in tune with, hey, this is probably not the time to be, you know, merchandising, you know, vacation apparel. It's probably not the time to be merchandising your, hey, buy your dress for prom. I would be thinking about what's resonant with your audience. How are they engaging with you today? And offer them things that are relevant to how they're engaging with you today.
That's exactly right. Like you said, we've got some examples here of what some merchants are doing just to be authentic about what's going on. Like this first ad is from Michael's. I saw this recently. Boredom busters, you know, like we're talking about, we got kids going crazy. My 7-year-old Henry is just about to bust out of the house. And so keeping him engaged and taking care of him is obviously a priority. And so I'm thinking about stuff that, you know, I can buy to help with that. And so they're being upfront and honest. I like that. You know, here we've got a sports apparel store talking about how active it is. You know, people, they've got to burn off energy. They want to stay fit. You know, a lot of our employees, they obviously can't go to the gym, and they're looking at things that they can do to stay healthy and cut stress down, et cetera. There's a merchant called Secret Lab, Dan, here. I saw this ad, the stay-at-home sale up to $150. You know, they're being honest. Look, everybody's at home. That's the key thing, is everybody's at home. They've got easy access to the internet. And I like how you were talking about, you know, merchants that, you know, apparel merchants, folks that sell T-shirts, whatever. It's like, well, you know, how can I benefit from this? What can I do for my brand? And, you know, they can promote how comfortable, you know, your shirts are and how you can look, you know, stylish even at home and be comfy. You know, that's one of the things we're doing right now with some of our apparel vendors, our clients rather. So those are things that we can do. Dan, what are your thoughts on this type of ad strategy?
Yeah, and you know, each business is going to be different, right? So if you
right, of course,
you know, if this is relevant for a B2C business, although maybe you can be selling those chairs to a B2B that has employees working from home. But you know, a B2B business, it's important to think about you know what's going to resonate with your B2B customers as well. And oftentimes, in that sense, listen, BigCommerce, we sell to businesses as well, and our job is to get merchants selling online and growing their revenue and profitability. At the end of the day, you need to understand why people would buy from you. What about your product in today's day and age, with all that is happening in terms of, you know, everybody adjusting to our new current reality? what is it about your product that's going to continue to help solve for the same challenges they were evaluating you for in the first place?
Hmm.
What pains are you going to solve that they still have today, even in their current situation, and they'll probably have when the dust settles, and no matter what that means, with the dust settling with the situation, are they still going to have those same challenges, and are they still going to be able to capitalize on the same opportunities with your products as well? So certainly
That's
a
right.
merchandising standpoint on the B2C side, but I would say this is equally important if you sell to other businesses.
That's right. Now we have to make a distinction there. I'm sure some B2B uh, attendee watching this is like, what's boredom buster have to do with me, right? And so, but I think they have to focus on what they can specifically do for their B2B customers. And just, I think the key thing is you got to be authentic. You got to be a problem solver in whatever way that makes sense for your business, and make sure that how you're communicating that resonates with the customer. You can't just set it and forget it. What you had probably up on your site a few weeks ago, it might not make sense anymore. You may need to adjust into this new paradigm, no matter if you're a B2B or a B2C merchant. Right, Dan?
Yeah, it's exactly right. It's exactly right.
Okay. Let's go on to number 4, which is protect your golden goose site experience. That's what my wife is a very smart business person, and she talks about how you got to protect the golden goose. That's what lays the golden egg, and you've got to make sure it's taken care of. And just like we started off talking about in the webinar, how we've got some merchants that are they're scared, they're not wanting to do anything. And then we've got some merchants that have to do something. They're rolling up their sleeve, they're getting active, they're getting very proactive about opportunities in front of them. One of the first things, Dan, is you got to stay on top of the numbers, right? So as you look in analytics and reporting, that's going to give you some real-time insights as to what's going on. And as you look at those analytics, you can't just isolate. You have to fix the areas that are impacting conversions. If you've let something slide, if you've got an area on your site that is broken, that is negatively impacting customers, you got to fix them. Now more than ever, you've got to roll up your sleeve and get that done. And just like we've been talking about with the ads and whatnot, make it authentic for your market, but you got to stay fresh with the right merchandising offers. What are some things when you think about protecting that golden goose, Dan, that merchants need to keep in mind? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I think it's a great point, and it's about, if people are making the effort to get to your digital properties, you want to do things that will get them to convert. And so, you know, examples of what we're starting to see in market is introducing policies you haven't offered before. So, for example, if your returns policy is 30 days, extend that to 90, right? Reduce the fear and uncertainty that people will be having in transacting on your product by extending your return policy. Think about gift
That's
cards
good.
as a way to increase cash flow as well. If you need to continue to invest in your people, in your product, in your service, in your merchandising, think about gift cards as a way to grow current revenue. Obviously, you'll be able to ship products, but also, there's benefits that are around, breakage, around overage, more importantly, that you can capitalize on in order to goose revenue. And we are seeing it's worth mentioning. I don't want to make this seem it's all roses, right? And so, we are seeing merchants have disruption to some of their logistics and fulfillment capabilities. Where that's happening, it's important you consider as a merchant things like pre-orders. So, if you have a facility, a fulfillment facility that's being disrupted right now due to shelter-in-place orders, take pre-orders. And by the way, like, give a discount on pre-orders. You can, in many cases, actually run the card, at the very least authorize the card. Be mindful of the fact that those authorizations typically last about 30 days. So if you are going to do this and you're not going to be able to fulfill in 30 days, and it's not a subscription product that does that authorization tokenization, just be mindful of that, because you may need to get it again in 30 days. But sorry, that was a little tactical. But it is important to think about ways, if you're having trouble from a fulfillment standpoint, you need to stay in business. Gift cards, pre-orders are two things we're seeing a lot of for some of our more sophisticated and forward-thinking merchants.
No, I love that. I think that gift cards are something that you can advertise right up front on your homepage, and I love the suggestion for pre-orders. You know, one of our clients sells furniture, different things for game rooms and whatnot, and you know their supply chain has been impacted through what's going on with China, et cetera, and the pre-order policy has been huge for him, is what I understand. Is making sure that's prominent on product pages and people understand the pre-order policy, right? That's another thing. Is pre-order policies change from merchant to merchant, and so making sure that you're upfront about what to expect when your card is charged, et cetera, is critical to the usability and the experience on the site. So I like that suggestion. Thank you, Dan. Let's go on to number 5, which is, let's see, evaluate resource allocation. So again, is you're thinking about, you know, whether it's supply chain like we talked about or even your internal resources. One of the big things that I'm talking to merchants about right now, Dan, is to make sure that as people are watching their cash, right, is they're thinking about every dollar that's going out, make sure that what's being spent is on what directly impacts your sales. And that's why we're talking about protecting that golden goose. Your site is that. You've got to think about the dollars that you're spending and what the ROI you can expect during this tumultuous time. And so think about how your cash is being spent there. And communicate with your partners or vendors and staff to maintain flow. You know, I would include BigCommerce into that, Dan, is have regular conversations with the platform, with the vendors that you work with your internal staff, because your team has to adapt. You know, this is not business as usual. And so, you know, I have regular conversations with my staff. You know, we had a conference call this morning at EYStudios, and we talked about, okay, here's the challenge today. Here's what we need to do. Here's the mindset we need to have, et cetera. That's so important. And then finally, consider outsource methods to save time and money. Sometimes you've got to think about what you can do with another company that could perhaps speed you up as a way to save money as well. What are your thoughts on this, Dan, as you look at these points?
Yeah, so this is really, I think, one of the more important ones that we're going to touch on today, because everyone's initial inclination, especially for large enterprises, and we serve everyone from small businesses all the way up through Fortune 5 companies. And what we see typically is that it's the bigger businesses that focus too much on protecting, you know, their lead and what they have, that golden goose, and they underinvest. That enables smaller, more nimble, and less risk-averse businesses to adapt. And adaptation is really the name of the game here. And so, you know, if you can adapt, then you're going to be thriving when all is said and done. This is the fact that I presume everyone, if not the majority of the people on this webinar today, are already selling online. I mean, you're ahead of that game. This is the catalyst, and this is really the inflection point for e-commerce to go, honestly, from 18% of total sales, I think, where it ended up last year. I mean, there's an opportunity for that to double over the next 12 months. And so the businesses that are investing in the right things now, their digital experience and optimizing for that, are the ones that are going to come out of this with a lead. And every time there's a situation like this, it's an opportunity for innovative and thoughtful people to come out ahead. Think, you know, when we were in this situation, it's obviously dissimilar in that, you know, the last situation was not a general health concern and risk for everyone, but you know, the housing crisis of 2008, companies that came out of that were Slack and Uber and Square and Airbnb and Pinterest. You need to be thinking about how you can differentiate, and probably to the benefit of these merchants, we're actually starting to see customer acquisition costs go down, especially on Google, on paid social, as bigger Fortune 500 businesses cut costs in this environment. Now is the time, if you're thoughtful about, you know, the merchandising of those ads and where those ads sit, and you know, the example of the work from home bundle that you can promote in paid social. Now you'll actually have an opportunity to have less noise because fewer people advertising, and I think lower cost of customer acquisition. So it is time to really think about where are our dollars going in our business, what can we outsource, what's our core competency, where should we double down?
No, I like that. And I'm sure you've been keeping up with what's going on with Amazon, some of their shipping delays, some of the policies that they're rolling out. And to me, Dan, that's an opportunity for merchants to jump on, wouldn't you think, as far as what Amazon's experiencing right now?
Yeah, well, it's both a risk. I mean, if you're overly reliant on marketplaces, certainly,
Hmm.
you're feeling that pain right now. But it's also an opportunity for you to take this chance to engage with your end customers directly, right?
Hmm.
And be true to and thoughtful about how you can speak to them and do things direct to consumer, direct to your brand that you're not allowed to do on Amazon, to be honest. And so this is your chance to do things like extend your return policy, to do things like surprise and delight them with, sign up on my website for a subscription of that product rather than being relying on Amazon Prime, and we'll get you a free month of the product. So think about how you can take those customers who already know your product and get them to come to you directly to reduce your cost of goods sold.
Right. Good point. All right, let's go into number 6. Actually, Dan, we've got a question here. Somebody from the webinar here, attendee, is asking, we've been getting a lot of customer service emails asking if we are open. What are ways we can make changes to our site to show that we are still open and running? What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, well, so for one thing, I would be proactive about that, and not just be reliant on your site. Because remember, people come to your site themselves. There's kind of sourced traffic, and then there's self-sourced traffic. The self-sourced traffic is people coming to your website. So once they're already on your website, it should definitely be obvious to the consumer that you're open for business and able to ship product. If there are, fulfillment delays, I would be pretty clear about that in the site.
Right.
Um, but then,
Good point.
the question becomes, what are the other channels through which you can engage with those customers? Brick and mortar obviously is a channel that is hurting right now, and so it might be your social channels. If you have a Facebook follower, Twitter followers, Instagram followers, if you have an email service list, those are all ways I'd be proactive in communicating to your customers that you're open for business, you appreciate their business, encourage them to continue to shop with you, and there may be special offers for them coming directly to your website. First time shopper, sign up for email address, get a discount, that type of thing. Especially for people that are just coming to your website for the first time, like everybody has that light box that pops up now. Make that light
Hmm.
box. We are open for business and appreciate you coming to see us. Here's 20% off your first order for as a thank you for your patronage, something to that effect.
Right. No, that was a great question. We appreciate you asking that. And if anybody else has any questions for me or Dan, or even the site review portion, if you have any questions, just hit the chat field right there and let us know those. But let's go right into number 6, Dan, the sixth and final point before we go into site reviews, which is look past the storm. Dan, we don't know when this thing is going to end, and I know a lot of folks differ on that. There's a lot of commentary out there, but at some point this storm will subside, and I think it's very important for merchants to look ahead, right, to look past that. One thing I do know is that holidays are still going to happen. There's events on the horizon that are still going to happen, and merchants have to look ahead to that. And the danger of just holding tight and wait until everything subsides before you do anything is you're not going to be ready to take advantage of those times when they hit, right, the good times. And so we have to look ahead past the storm to take advantage of that. Before we go into the next bullet, what do you think about just that concept of looking ahead, Dan?
I think that's exactly right. I think people operate in a couple of different ways. They operate out of the chance to take advantage of opportunities, or they operate out of fear. And I think the more of us that do think of this as a way, people are going to come out of this situation as winners and as losers. And I think the more you can do now to position yourself to catapult out of this, there's going to be $2 trillion in, a government package just passed, putting dollars into people's pockets. How you treat them now is going to, and how you invest in your experience with those customers is going to dictate quite a bit about whether you come out of this in a better position than you went into it, right? So if you have brick and mortar stores and you have stylists in your stores and you have an email list, well, why don't you send out an email list saying, hey, why don't we schedule a 30-minute Google Hangout with one of our stylists? They're not doing a whole lot right now.
Mm-hmm.
No one's walking into the stores, right? It could be beauty and cosmetics. It could be fashion and apparel. It could be anything. If you have employees that you're not sure how they can add value to your customers today, like the example I just gave, be creative and engage with your customers differently.
Great points. Great points. Now, this next bullet here, it says make sure your marketing plan is structured with the desire to execute. You know, Dan, I talked to a business owner late yesterday afternoon. He said, Eric, I don't know how to have a business plan right now. He was honest. It's like, I don't know how to plan through this thing. And one of the things we ended up doing on the call is we worked out a best case scenario, a medium case scenario, and a worst case scenario. And we have to pivot, right? That's the beauty of small business in particular, is that you can pivot. You can be nimble, and you have to be nimble these days. You have to think, all right, well, this door closed. Let me go over here to see what opening is over, for this customer, et cetera, et cetera. Because the plans have to be nimble. What do you think about that? No matter what, though, you got to have a plan. You got to execute the plan. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would say focus on contingency plans. The only certainty of the plan you put together is that it's going to need changing.
Right.
And so, you want to have a point of view around where your business should be going, but also don't be afraid to change it and pivot it and have a plan A and a plan B and a plan C. Does this last another 3 weeks? Here's my plan A. Does this last another 3 months? Here's my plan B. Does this last, X long? Here's my plan C. And so, I would recommend, contingencies, and I would recommend, adaptability to think and move on your feet as the situation changes.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the final bullet here is stay engaged with your customer base to pivot to new opportunities. Like we're saying, you have to be nimble in order to pivot. But the key point here is to stay engaged with the customer base. I think especially now, Dan, the temptation is to hunker down, right? Is to get with your staff, to get with your folks and do a lot of planning. But if it's not connecting with what the customer base, like we keep talking about here today, if it's not connecting with the customer base, all your plans are out the window anyway, right? Mm-hmm. They're not going to work. Yeah. And so you got to be talking to your folks, to your customers, to your clients. That's what I'm doing. I'm talking to business owners. That's our customer base, because I need to be engaged. For EYStudios' sake, I need to know what they're thinking and feeling, and so that helps me plan. And merchants have to do the same with customers. That's not something you can just delegate. I would encourage business owners to stay engaged with social media, to read the posts, to ask questions, to be curious as to what's going on with customers. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, the last thing I would probably add to that, and I know we want to get to the site review, is don't be afraid to rethink who your customer is. So I'll give you an example. Yeah. We have one of our customers is a well-known brand in the fitness category. Prior to 30 days ago, 75% of their business came from gyms and fitness centers. Over the last 30 days, 75% of their business is coming from consumers who need to buy, equipment to work out at home. And so that means they've had to dramatically shift how they sell, how they market, who they're selling to, how they fulfill. And so don't be afraid to do something that dramatic. I mean, this is, a merchant doing 9 figures in overall revenue every year, and they're willing to adapt quickly. So don't be afraid to do the same.
Mm-hmm. Good points. Well, folks, I hope this is giving you some things to chew on. Obviously, this is somewhat general because we're not talking about your business in particular. But if you'd like us to, if you'd like for us to engage with you, think out some strategies to think about what you can do in particular for your customers, we'd love to do that. I know the folks over at Big Commerce are willing to as well. But hopefully this is giving you some good food for thought. So we've got some fun stuff now, Dan. Hopefully this was thought-provoking, but now we've got some good things for the rest of the webinar here for site reviews. Dan, can you hang out a little bit if we can engage you on some site review stuff? You got time?
Sure I can. Thank you.
Okay, great. So that's me and Dan, and I want to introduce Grace Martinez. Grace, are you there?
I'm here and happy to be here.
Grace, how's it going?
It's going great. Just quarantined at home and making the most of it.
Now, are your dogs out? Is your kid out, or what's going on at your house?
My kid is actually still in daycare. They're doing all
Okay.
kinds of crazy procedures to keep him there. And then my dog is quarantined in his crate. So hopefully you will not be hearing from him.
Okay. Well, Grace, thank you for being here. I know you've got a lot of good stuff to share with the sites we're reviewing today. Evan Perkins, I guess they allowed you back. Evan, you did a good enough job last time to warrant coming back onto the big review. We appreciate you being here. How's it going in your neck of the woods?
It's going well here in Austin, Texas. They just issued the everybody has to stay at home now for a few weeks, so we're adjusting to things. Home with the family. Apologies for any children's screams you hear in the background. They're doing well though.
Good deal. Glad you're here, Evan. All right.
Thanks.
So
good to be here.
Let's go to the next slide. We want to talk about what to expect. Remember, these are not meant to be full reviews. We could really take up the whole hour talking about what you could do for a particular site. And for the sake of time, we'll point out as much as we can within the time allotted. And remember, if we don't get to your site today, we've had a lot of folks submit their site for review. Thank you. But because we've got a limited amount of time, if you'd like for a full site review, if you'd like to do a one-on-one audit of that, we're happy to offer that service. We've actually had, Grace, we've done a lot of those recently, right? Since the big review started, we've had a lot of merchants reach out for those private one-on-one reviews, and those are fun. We actually go into a lot of detail. It's not live, right? It's not in front of others. It's a private site review. Those are a lot of fun. If you like one of those, just let us know. Hit us up in the chat. We'll be sure to arrange one of those for you. But somebody I've not recognized, I don't know if she's still on mute, is Ivana Gonzalez. Ivana, are you able to speak? Are you muted? How are you?
Hey guys, I'm doing great for the most part.
Good. Sorry I didn't unmute a while ago, Ivana. That was my fault. But I appreciate you being part of the webinar. And we've actually got a poll question before we get into the site reviews, right, Ivana?
Yes, sir.
All right, so we got the quick poll. Grace, you want to kick this off? Walk them through it?
Yeah, so we're just asking you what percentage of your revenue comes from users on mobile devices, and you can select what applies to you there. The point of this is today we're doing, mobile reviews specifically and talking about best practices there. And the point being is that everyone, no matter what that percentage is, everyone has people coming to their sites and ordering through mobile. So it's important to be mobile thinking when you are designing your site. You always want to keep that in mind to make sure that the customer experience is seamless no matter what platform they're viewing it on.
Yeah, so March is the mobile month here. We're going to be reviewing some mobile sites. So select one of the followings in terms of where your revenue comes from on mobile devices. All right, that's a pretty good mix there. Well, except the 80 to 100%. What are you seeing there, Grace? Is that surprising to you?
It's pretty standard. From what I've seen, most mobile revenue is around like 45 to 55%. And I see a lot of people have checked, I don't know, and that's okay. But I would say, especially during this time right now when people are sitting at home on their phones, might be a good time to look into that and figure out how much of your revenue is coming from that and be very forward thinking in that area.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, when you've got a third of the audience that doesn't know, we would encourage you to know, like we were saying with the golden goose points, is we really need to make sure that you're looking at the numbers in order to make wise decisions with your resources these days. But let's go right into the site reviews. What's our first site? What do we have first on the docket?
We're looking at the International Thespian Society.
Okay.
And as you can see, we're doing mobile, so we won't be going through the desktop version, but we'll be talking about a little bit of how things scale down, obviously. But before we jump into that, I wanted to get Evan to talk a little bit about BigCommerce and their capabilities with mobile and how they prepare to make sure that your site is mobile friendly.
Yeah, sure thing. Thank you for that. This has really been a long time focus of BigCommerce. So obviously mobile is huge. We saw in the poll. Our research says the same thing, 45-ish% or so of checkouts are done on mobile. And I think the prediction is that'll push into the majority for everyone by 2021. So That said, BigCommerce is mobile responsive out of the box, meaning all of our themes in the Stencil marketplace that we offer are optimized for mobile browsing and mobile checkout. The other way to say that is you can build one site on BigCommerce, and that site is going to automatically resize based on viewing device, whether that's an iPhone or an Android or a tablet. Your site's always going to look and function in the way that's intended, in the best way possible for, again, whatever device it's being viewed on. We also have a layer in the background of things like Akamai Image Manager. So that's going to automatically right-size images, create mobile optimized, essentially versions of images to make sure your site stays as fast as possible, again, based on whatever viewing device. An iPhone doesn't need that giant high-res image that the desktop does, but you don't have to go and create as a merchant, different copies of images, a mobile version, for example. All that's being done automatically. So, long story short, we've definitely got merchants covered on the mobile front.
Awesome. So I want to jump into SiteFrame here. And so what we're talking about on mobile for SiteFrame, that would be that area that says all prices are in US dollars, all the way down to that blue bar that has what we call the hamburger menu, which is that 3 yellow bars on top of each other and the cart. So
Evan doesn't call it that. He calls it the pancake stack or something. Is that right, Evan? I've never heard that ever.
I've always heard this
stack of pancakes, right?
The pancake stack, but I guess we're making a ruling here. It's officially
the
hamburger
I'm
menu.
calling it right here, right now. No pancakes. That's the hamburger menu. So we've settled it.
That's fair.
All right.
All right. But so Eric, one of the first things I'm seeing here is how much space that logo is forcing them to take up. Because it is so much information inside that logo, they're kind of forced and able to make you be able to read it. They have to make it large enough for you to read it, and therefore it's taking up a lot of the view space for the user. So they have to actually scroll to get to any product that you're selling. So what we would recommend is either taking out some of that text, like the welcome to the ITS award store, or even if your logo is identifiable enough, just using that mark. So just like the comedy and drama faces. And then that way you would be able to have your hamburger menu, your logo, and your shopping cart all on one line with maybe your search bar underneath it. And you would save a lot of vertical space and be able to show product before you even start scrolling.
Right. So what I'm seeing, Grace, is we look at the logo is the slogan with the yellow on white. That's pretty much illegible, and you've got some very tiny text with that welcome text in the area below that. And as you just look at the top part of this mobile experience, we're talking a lot about the top, the menu and whatnot, but with the blue bar with the hamburger menu, the shopping cart, it's adjacent right to that scroller. I know you'll want to talk about that a little bit. And then this regular shipping, $3.95. So you don't have a lot that's even clickable right above the scroll with that. You've got the rotator, the scroller there. But before we scroll down further with the feature and whatnot, what are you seeing just like with that text and that scroller there, Grace? What are your thoughts?
A few thoughts. So actually on desktop, because I was obviously viewing this on desktop when I started reviewing everything, when you scale down, you lose your CTAs. So these banners that are well designed just become kind of inactionable because I don't know what I'm supposed to do, how I'm supposed to interact with it. Some of the quotes are getting cut off, so they're just not using that space as well as they could be. We always normally suggest having like some kind of text saying what you're advertising and then a very clear defined call to action. And that's missing on mobile. And I would say never sacrifice that. Just because you're moving down to mobile doesn't mean that you need to sacrifice those things. Definitely always have a clear call to action and make that space usable and to the best of your ability, because you don't want to waste that. And then additionally, I would go back up to the site frame and just talk about the menu. So right now we actually have that hamburger menu that we were talking about earlier, but we also have this menu at the top, and that becomes a little bit confusing because when I see menu, I think, hey, that's the end all be all. That's what I'm supposed to click on. That's going to house my shopping link. but it actually doesn't, and that's actually the account menu. So what I would do instead is maybe have the little account person that you see frequently on sites. It's just like a little silhouette of a head and shoulders, or just say my account and have a little caret drop down, so that they know there are more options to click on underneath there, and kind of let that hamburger menu stand alone. And then lastly, on the site frame, we've talked about this on other site reviews in the past, just that shopping cart. Everything is yellow, so that shopping cart isn't really standing out. I would say definitely make that another color so that it just draws the eye, and use that as your sales funnel color throughout the website.
Right. Good points. Let's scroll down and look at these featured items here. So you've got a lot of real estate here for these individual items. As we've talked about several times on big review webinars, this space is probably better utilized for types versus items. Wouldn't you think, Grace?
Yeah, so those things that we have called kickers in the past, which are your categories rather than your specific items, because you want to show an array of what you sell. Like we sell everything from plaques to trophies to whatever it is, just to give them a better idea and a summation of everything that you sell rather than just throwing product at them. And then you can always add a row of featured products or best-selling products as well. But I think it definitely helps to kind of categorize what you sell right at the get-go.
Right.
Yeah. And then, so if we want to scroll to the top and go into one of these product listing pages, if you click the menu, the hamburger menu at the top, and go to trophies. So a couple things that I just want to touch on this page. I would recommend not having just one item across and maybe doing 2 items across, just to keep the user from having to scroll so much. And also I would consider adding some filters in here. That is always helpful in searching. I mean, you could search by like metal type or by type of recognition award. There's always things that can make it just a little bit easier for people to filter and navigate through your site, and I would always want to give them that option. Eric, do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, I actually have a question here from one of the webinar attendees. They're asking, pull it up. When we're looking to make updates to our site, should we think about the desktop or mobile design first? We can open that up to the group. But Grace, what do you think first? And I'll go to Dan.
So I think this does kind of go back to that poll question that we asked at the beginning. You need to look at where most of your revenue is coming from. And I think both of them are super important, because either way, you're going to have people coming from desktop and mobile. So you should be thinking about both. And that's what's great about BigCommerce, is they've created these templates and all these things that work to scale automatically and make sure that everything works no matter what you're viewing them on. But I know at EY, we want to make sure that it works just as well on mobile as it does on desktop.
Right. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, so I think it certainly starts with understanding how your customers are interacting with you, and there are free tools, as you know, to that 33% that said I don't know. I'm not trying to shame anybody, but I would love to. We can even just schedule time to talk about how you can actually know, because there are free tools to understand where your traffic is coming from. And where conversions are coming from. The thing of it is that you shouldn't necessarily have to choose either. There are things that are super conducive to the checkout experience that are still relevant to the desktop experience. So mobile specific would be things like digital wallets, right? So we know if you don't have a digital wallet, like some type of gateway that enables you to have a simple one-click checkout. Defaulting if you're a repeat customer, knowing your address, all of that stuff is important to mobile, but it's also important to desktop. And then think about the sizing of your image and how you want to lay it out as well. I mean, the merchandising you may want to merchandise differently too if it's different types of customers who are coming to those different sites as well. So the short answer to that is it really helps to understand who your customers are and how they're engaging with you on which medium before answering that question completely.
Yeah, no, good points. Grace, anything real key you want to talk about with this site before we go on to the next?
Yeah, let's go on to PDP. So
Okay.
let's click into one of these products. So I would just on this be thinking about mobile design because they do have so much white space here above the actual product in between each line of content. So it does create a lot of scrolling. And what we really suggest is trying to put that add to cart button as high up on the page as possible. So that's something that you need to be thinking about specifically when you're designing on the product page is how do I get that add to cart high up on the page and very obvious. They do have it yellow here, which is a bright color, but I would be careful because they're using yellow a lot throughout their website. So again, maybe make that a different color. And then another thing to just watch on this page is that red text. It makes it almost look like an error of some sort. And I know you're trying to get their attention, but there are definitely other ways we can do that. Put it on a background that's not quite as jarring, but it makes it look like they've made a mistake before they've even selected anything. So I would just be very wary of that. And then, so if we want to go down and look at when you fill out this product, or like go to engraving options, say add engraving information. Yeah, we have to select what type we want. And so we have more of that red text. And then I would just say be careful here because it looks like they weren't 100% thinking of mobile when designing this section. So the text is a little bit overlapping. And you just want to make sure that stuff like that doesn't happen. So I would even suggest for them to move when you're filling out each of these lines, that box over on the right is actually, it's showing you a preview of what you're filling out. So I would say just move that underneath. That's a super simple way to solve for that, just to make all the information take up the right amount of space, but also show you what you need to see. I think that simple adjustment could really help them out.
And Grace, what are your thoughts about having the add to cart with the yellow box be virtually the same as the add engraving information? Do you think that should be rendered differently, either from a color standpoint, icons? That's such a departure, right, from what people are typically seeing with the add to cart up front. But what are your thoughts as far as kind of how that could potentially differ, those two buttons?
Right. And I was thinking about that when I was reviewing it. At first, I was kind of bothered by it, but then I realized this is such a unique thing that I feel like they do need to have a little bit of parity because it is pushing you further down that sales funnel. So I think it's smart that they're obviously the same color. So you're kind of equating the two. I would say maybe make add to cart a lot larger, maybe even add a little cart icon in there just to make it very noticeable and still the most dominant button on the page.
Yeah, great points. All right, we'll go on to the next site.
Yeah. If we want to pull up Forever Living products. And this site is actually it's custom built, so it's not BigCommerce. So we'll get a chance to see something a little bit different. So for this one, they have a very clean site frame. I don't have much to comment on there, except for that, again, their cart button needs to stand out a little more. I would say use some color. Their logo is actually, I think, like green and yellow or blue and yellow. So maybe use one of those pops of colors to just draw your eye to that cart. Because right now there's even something in the cart, but it's still just as kind of muted as everything else up there.
So the first thing I'm thinking too, Grace, too, is I mean, they're selling hand soap, right? And I like how they've got, don't forget to wash your hands, products for your health and wellness, et cetera. But I think they're missing out on an opportunity, particularly from a merchandising standpoint, to really jump on what's happening right now in the world, right? I mean, when you've got the soap, et cetera, that we could be a little bit more creative in the way that we're handling these graphics, because they've got products that people want right now. You know, my wife is like, Eric, we got to get soap. Where are we getting soap? And so when we see something like this, when, you know, our local Publix is out of soap, et cetera, and they've got this, I think you can get creative about it. What do you think, Grace, in terms of that merchandising?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a lot of what you guys were talking about in the adapt and overcome segment. It's just think about your products in a creative way and how to really market right now, and sell what works for the world right now. So that hand
Hmm.
soap, they actually make hand sanitizer too, which I think they're currently probably stocked out of. But it's just advertising those things and putting them at the forefront because they are so topical right now. I think could
Yeah.
really help them and benefit them.
Dan, what are you seeing there, or Evan? What are you guys seeing with this in particular?
Yeah, I think
Evan, why don't you go first?
yeah, on the these particular category pages, adding something like a filtered search or a sort by option would be really nice, right? I'm looking for capsules versus liquid or whatever the case may be, sorted by price, title. Those types of things would help people be able to navigate to the things they're really looking for versus having just to scroll through.
Yeah, I would say
Dan,
also you want to. I think the feedback here is similar to what Grace was describing earlier, which is, you don't want people to have to scroll 3 times to get to the next product. It can make your thumb start hurting looking at this. So you want to be mindful of enabling people to get to the product that they want as quickly as possible. I also feel like you've lost the search box a little bit here. And the problem is if you don't see exactly what you're looking for here, how do you get to the next thing to find what you were looking for?
Right. Exactly.
What's the next step if I can't find exactly what I'm looking for here?
Yeah.
That
And I
makes
think
sense?
that's another thing that they're struggling with, the same thing as the trophy site was struggling with. They're not adequately like showing all the array of products that they sell on their homepage either by search or by menu or their kickers. They're kind of showing they're doing more graphic stuff, but it's still specific products rather than the categories of those products. So I think that's something they could benefit from as well. As you start to scroll here, I think like one is a drink and one is some like vitamins. But if we can scroll down the page a little bit. And then another thing is this site is very stacked. So it has a great layout on desktop, but when you sort it down to mobile, everything just stacks on top of each other and it becomes very, very repetitive. And so I would say don't let mobile like condense your design. Like there are ways that we can get creative and still make it look great and not feel like a repetitive nature just over and over again. You can do 2 columns. You can do one that takes up the full width. You can do one with text on top of a banner. So I would say just get creative so that people don't just feel like they're looking at the same information over and over again. Do y'all have anything to add for the homepage?
Well, if you could stop right there, it says your life, your terms, right there with the image there. We're going from products into something that's more lifestyle centered, but are you ready to seize it, learn more? I'm trying to figure out if I was a customer, what's going to really promote that click, Grace. I think it's good to have. I'm not sure exactly what's on the opposite side of that, right? Is that going to take me to products? Is that going to take me to a blog post, et cetera? I think from a usability perspective, that might benefit from some more clarity.
Right. And I think usually when you see content and stuff like that, it's further down the page after you've really defined who you are as a company, all the things you sell, your like best-selling items, and then it's more like, hey, if you still want to learn more, here are some more content related links. So that's typically
Exactly.
what I suggest putting that after people know what you're about and what you do.
All right. So what's next?
Let's go into the mobile menu because I want to talk about this for a second before we actually go into the product listing page. So one thing that I think they could definitely benefit from is taking all of their shopping categories out of that shop button. You don't want to make it harder for your clients to get to where they're going. So by just making another click for them, there's no point to it really. I would say just pull them out and let them all exist as soon as somebody hits that hamburger menu.
Right.
All right.
Okay.
And then Another thing I would say is treat join and about slightly differently than you are your shopping links, because they're not the same. And obviously you want your shopping links to have precedent over your informational links. So maybe bold them or put them in a different color, whatever it is. I would just make them stand out a little bit more than I would those informational links.
All right.
But let's click on shop and go to nutritional. And we'll see a product listing page here. So they are doing something good that we've talked about in other episodes. So they have a banner image and some SEO text. But typically we do suggest that if you're going to have this amount of SEO text, that you put it at the bottom of your page so it doesn't push your products down. Especially since it's not on top of the banner, it's underneath the banner. So it's just taking up, again, a lot of vertical space and pushing your product further down the page. So that's something that we would definitely suggest.
Yeah, that's a good catch.
Yeah. But they're doing good. They have wish list functionality, which is great. I would say maybe make your price a little bit more obvious, and then add to bag. If you hover over that, it's black, which is nice, but I would say, again, keep with that sales funnel color. They're using yellow for the rest of the site, so I would say keep it that yellow just to have the same consistency. And so let's just click into that product. And look at this for a minute. So they're for the most part doing a pretty good job. Again, I would say the add to cart, we need to get it further up on a page. And so for mobile, I know sometimes in desktop we have this little blurb that tells you a little bit about the product. And sometimes when we scale down to mobile, we suggest just kind of nixing that or getting rid of that so that your call to action is higher up on that page, especially if you're going to have the information further down in a more information tab or whatever it is. It's pushing that main thing that you want them to click further down the page, and it's not necessarily needed when you do have that informational tab. Right. And then again, the price needs to be a little bit more noticeable. When people come to this page, they're looking for your price and your add to bag. And right now, neither of those things is really popping off the page. So I would say maybe make the price a little bit bigger and add the to bag that yellow color and also a little bit bigger, just so those two things are the most noticeable thing on the page.
Well, especially with that outline, right? But with the plus minus and the one and the add to bag, it's just like a collection of same size, same formatted, I should say, squares and rectangles. So that doesn't really pop, like you were saying.
Yeah, right. You need to be cognizant of design when you are using similar elements like that. And then as you scroll, they do have some more information. They have the description, and I think they have like ingredients and stuff. I would suggest making those accordion menus so that people can maximize and minimize those and look for what they need rather than having to scroll so much. So say someone only wants to see the ingredients, but they don't really care about seeing the description. It just makes it that much easier for them to find that information and click into it.
Right.
Right.
Good
Okay,
points.
so
Anything else on this side? Are we good?
I think we're good overall. Yeah, I think that's pretty much all I had to say. Unless y'all have anything you want to add.
Well, I want to queue up the next webinar. We appreciate everybody joining us on this webinar. Dan, thank you so much for making the time. I know Evan had to drop out, but we appreciate you and Evan, everybody from Big Commerce, the support that you give us for the webinar. I think we've covered some really good content. We've got more to share with merchants. Any final thoughts, Dan, before we transition out of here?
No, I just want to, let everyone know, we're in this together from the Big Commerce perspective, constantly trying to identify ways to help our current merchants and prospective merchants who are struggling, continue to grow their online business, reach customers. I'm here to help. Eric, I appreciate you inviting me on to join and share a little bit about what we're seeing and with our customers, smart customers doing, and welcome the opportunity to talk to anyone that wants to talk to us.
Absolutely. We appreciate all you guys are doing for merchants and for partners, and we want to advertise the next webinar. Mark your calendar. It's scheduled for April 29th, 2020. We'll see exactly where the world is between now and then, but so far we've got that schedule. We'll have a lot of good site reviews there. If we didn't get your site review, let us know, and we can still work that in. And we've got a lot packed in for that as well. But everybody have a great day. You stay safe and healthy. We've got your back. Like Dan said, we're all in this together. And we'll see you next time on the Big Review. Thank you so much.
All right, guys.